morning, everyone, and welcome to Leland and Gray's Political Forum. For those of you who do not know me, I'm Gia Casella. I'm a senior, and I'm a member of CLIA, and I will be your Madam Moderator. To my left is Senior Alex Morrow, also a member of CLIA, and she will be my assistant and timekeeper for this forum. Okay, so before we begin, we have some rules. Audience, no talking, please. Put all iPods and electronics away, unless if you're taking pictures for the yearbook, which is fine. When you would like to ask a question, please raise your hand, be patient, and Kiara will, Kiara, can you stand up so everyone knows who you are? Kiara will have a microphone and she will come around to you. When you have the microphone, please state your name, and if you do not feel comfortable stating your name, state your grade, and please ask your question. It would be nice if you could direct your question to one of the candidates up here, or representatives, may I say that? Representatives up here. If you're not sure who to state the question to, I will ask one of the representatives to answer the question. So, and please be aware, audience, and I believe you guys already know this, representatives, that we are covering 5 topics today. Please, when you ask a question, please make sure it's relevant to that topic. No unnecessary questions like what's your favorite color and if you're married or so on and so forth. Representatives, you will have 2 minutes to answer each question. Alex, we have a nice time system up here. The green card means go. The yellow card means you have 30 seconds left. And the red card means stop, you're done. Okay, anyways. So, and representatives, this is not a campaign speech. This is intended to be a presentation for the students to express your views and your positions on the topics and the questions that will be asked to you. And okay, let's begin. Our first topic this morning will be environmental. What? Oh, right. Sorry.
So each party has candidates. Make sure that the microphones
Yeah. Yep.
So let me make sure
Okay.
that our microphones.
And also, representatives, you will have 2 minutes. Since we have multiple representatives of some of the parties, I would like to ask one representative of each party to have 2-minute introduction, to state your opinions and so on and so forth, and then at the end of the forum, you will have a 2-minute conclusion. And unfortunately today, the person representing the Progressive Party is not here today. Okay, let's begin.
So we'll just go down the line. Is that okay? And yes, and if you feel like you need the microphone, yes. And then you each will, because you are independent. So and then the 3 of you can sort of share the time. Thank you. So it should be on the tested.
Go right ahead.
Okay, hi. My name is Dick Merrick. I am a current state representative. I've been in the House for 10 years. I represent the 3 towns of Marlborough, Newfane, and Townsend. So I am both directly a state representative for a fair number of you here, and I'm certainly the state representative for the school. Rather than giving you a sort of political spiel at the beginning, I think most of you probably know Democrats and Republicans at least, and Mike Hebert is here, who has served the last term with me in the House representing a district a little south of here. So you've got two incumbents. You can tell us because we both wore legislative dress. I want to give you just a little quick synopsis of sort of who I am, where I serve in the legislature, tasks that I have. And then, if I have a couple of seconds, perhaps talk a little about the political process. As probably most of you know, the House has 150 members. We are divided into districts, so we each represent roughly 4,000 people. There's a certain range of variance to that, but it's fairly close. 4,172 would be the perfect district. I serve on a regular committee in the House. We have 14 committees in the Vermont House of Representatives, and they each have an area of jurisdiction. I'm on the Judiciary Committee, which has jurisdiction for all the criminal justice system, the oversight of the courts, the civil system, which deals with non-criminal matters, and we basically also end up reviewing an awful lot of legislation, and I can see time runs very, very quickly. In the real world, outside the legislature, I'm the vice president of the Vermont Historical Society. I live in Newfane. I'm vice chair of the Windham County Historical Society, on the Moore Free Library Board, which I currently chair, and I'm a village trustee of the village of Newfane. So, like most legislators, we do have a life outside of Montpelier, and I can see that that red card is just up. Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm Tim Goodwin. I live in Weston. I wish to represent the towns going from south to north, Jamaica, Stratton, Winhall, Londonderry, and Weston. I don't have a party because there is no independent party. I think independents perhaps run as independents because sometimes issues are not partisan, and other times, in order to represent people well, you might not always vote a party line. I really think, and I think most of you, and you, think that it would be good if we south of Route 4 could see an economy that was perhaps a little closer, a little more vibrant to what is up in Chittenden County and Burlington. And one of the issues that I'm interested in and enthusiastic about is seeing us move in that direction. In our district, property taxes, or the level of property taxes at this point in time, are not really very good for our economy, which is tourist and tends to be second home, and of course the ski industry. So I'd like it a lot if we could do something about the level of our property taxes. The last issue that I'll bring up now that I'm interested in is in our district, school choice is very important. Thank you very much. I see the red.
Thank you.
Hi, how are you? My name is Emmett Dunbar, independent candidate for Windham, Bennington, Windsor District, which, as Tim said, is Jamaica, Stratton, Winhall, Londonderry, Weston. Thank you very much for having me and hosting this. It's nice to be here in Newfane, and Leland and Gray is very important to me, as most of the district has what people think of as and call school choice. But all the towns have a school choice, and Jamaica residents and all the students that are here from Jamaica, I would represent you when elected. And I'm very concerned with and aware of Leland and Gray. Although it's outside the district, it's the high school that you go to. So it's very important for me to be here and to learn about it. I was fortunate to have a tour with Jeremiah Burrow a month ago, and it seems like a really great school. And full of bright and creative, fun kids, students. I've been farming and teaching for the last 15 years in South Londonderry. My wife and I have Anjali Farm, and last winter I taught at Stratton Mountain School. I was also a paraeducator at Opportunity Learning in Ludlow and substituted in the area. I've had hundreds and hundreds of students come through the farm. I helped put in the community garden, school garden at Jamaica Elementary School 10 years ago with a grant that we wrote with Amy and Jason there. I'm very invested in our future, which are our children and our students, and I think that this is exactly the kind of thing that needs to go on to learn about democracy and take part in democracy and to increase the vote. Our district has 35 to 40% voters, and I think that it'd be great to have more. So you're here, and when you turn 18, and some of you aren't, some of you may be 18 now, most of you probably are not yet, and when you are, the most important thing you do is vote, because if you enter these discussions, you have a much stronger voice if you voted. If you haven't voted, many people will feel that, well, in order to have an opinion and to complain and to be concerned and to express your feelings towards what's going on, you got to vote. Thanks a lot.
Good morning, I'm Mike Hebert, and I represent Wyndham 1. As Representative Merrick alluded to, he and I are incumbents and running for re-election. Wyndham 1 is made up of two towns, Guilford and Vernon. First of all, I'd like to congratulate, I don't know if any of you are on the girls' soccer team, congratulations on your victory. Good luck on Saturday. I hope you guys prevail. And as always, it's a pleasure to join with students. My greatest background outside of political background is not in the legislature. I was a freshman last year, and unfortunately for me this year, I will not be a freshman, so they're actually going to expect me to know something. So it's going to be tricky. But I've spent 30 years on school board work. I've been on the Vernon School Board for 24 years. I was on the high school board for 12 years, and I was 6 years on the Warren School Board. So I'm very vested in education. In fact, when I was elected to the House, the Speaker asked you what committees you'd like to serve on, and I chose 3. Healthcare, which was related to my normal job. My training was in pulmonary physiology, so healthcare was a natural. My second was education, because all my time on school committees, and I taught at Springfield College for several years. And finally, natural resources and energy. Obviously, the energy, I represent the town of Vernon. Energy is pretty important to folks in Vernon, so that was very beneficial being on that committee. I was assigned to House Natural Resources and Energy. We've accomplished some pretty important pieces of legislation this year, the energy bill and the solid waste management bill being the two, probably the two most important that my committee worked on. But every committee does important work, and regardless of the committee that you happen to be on as a representative, you have a duty to your constituents, and you really need to represent their best interest on your committee. And all the committees are of significant importance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good morning everyone. Thanks for having us. My name is Ian Diamondstone, and I'm a Liberty Union candidate. And ironically, there's 3 Liberty Union candidates here, and we only have these 2 minutes, and we've decided to let Mary Alice Herbert tell you about Liberty Union. But I thought I'd at least introduce myself and look forward to having a chance to speak to you all.
I'm Owen Diamondstone, and I'm also a Liberty Union candidate.
And I'm Mary Alice Herbert, and I've been a Liberty Union candidate for a pretty long time. And I'm a candidate this year for Secretary of State, which has been my bailiwick as a Liberty Union candidate. And I've had a lot of fun being a candidate. And there is something about a party that probably has no hope of ever getting elected, actually. It gives you a lot of independence because you can really say things that nobody else will say. Before I forget it, I wanted to thank you very much for having both independents and Liberty Union candidates, because independent candidates and minor party candidates are having a very hard time being included in debates this year or being invited. So I appreciate that very much. I want to show you, though, this is the symbol of Liberty Union. You can see the elephant dunk, or Democrat, or Republican, who is this character with a dollar sign on his back, on his front, his necktie rather, and the irritant, the turtle that probably won't get elected, but is there with his unicorn horn because he knows it's going to take a long time for the ideas that are trying to be introduced to ever get accepted, is prodding the elephant to change its mind a little bit.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's begin. Okay, let's begin on our first topic, environmental and agricultural issues. Each candidate will have Each candidate has 2 minutes to answer each question. Who would like to begin? This includes Vermont Yankee. Nuclear power. Any of the representatives would like to?
Hi, I'm Zach Wilkins. What are your views on Vermont Yankee?
Would anyone like to begin? Go ahead.
We can work our way down the line. I suspect we all have views on Vermont Yankee. My view on it was that it should have been closed. The judge in the federal court case has entered a ruling essentially saying that Vermont's law on that subject that required state permission for relicensure was not valid. That decision's on appeal. I think the decision was wrong on its merits because it tried to look behind how the legislature decided to take its vote, and based on comments by 5 senators out of 180 representatives, he decided what our motive was in passing a law. But the matter is under litigation in a couple of forums, and so it's essentially out of the legislature's hands right now. And as a sneak preview, one thing I might say, Molly Burke for the Progressives is not able to be here because of a medical problem in the family. I won't assume that I can speak for her, but I will tell you that she and I probably vote alike about 99% of the time, so my views are probably a rough approximation of hers on a lot of issues. And since Mike Hebert is from Vernon, I suspect he and I may differ on this one.
Yes, Tim Goodwin again. I'm going to try not to duplicate anything that's been stated to my right. It's a fact, though, that Vermont Yankee will close. May close 20 years from now, may close sooner than that. Who knows what will come out of court? If something comes out of court that says close, that's when it ought to close. I am concerned that we should be doing what we can to plan to replace employment that's down there. There are a lot of good jobs down there that pay well, and there should be some planning going on to try to replace those jobs to keep that corner of the state in a healthy economy. That's it. I don't know if I took my time, but I'll pass it on.
Okay. I think that the conversation about whether Vermont Yankee should close now or later or when is actually not the conversation to have. I think that with the with the competition from natural gas and the reality of the cost of maintaining Vermont Yankee, that Vermont Yankee will close in the next 10 to 20 years. It's been voted to close at this time, but it's caught up in court, and that could last for a very long time with our society being so full of court cases and how long they take. So the conversation I like to have with people is about what are we going to do and what are the alternatives when Vermont Yankee is not there, and how are we going to supply that energy. And I think it's a combination of conservation, because the less energy we use, the less we need. I think it's about creating capital incentive for solar panels on residential homes and businesses, and in agriculture, which we've seen in southern Vermont already. And it's about looking at contracts with Hydro-Quebec and where energy comes from Canada. So I think that the conversation is about what do we need to do when Vermont Yankee isn't there, whether it closes today, tomorrow, or in 20 years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Merrick is correct. We don't agree on Vermont Yankee. I am a very strong supporter of the continued operation of the plant for a multitude of reasons. I live about a mile from the plant. I've done so for 30 years. Have a lot of friends and neighbors that live in the plant. I've toured the plant numerous times. I can't count how many times I've toured the plant. I feel very comfortable with the operation of the plant. But I believe the two people to my immediate right were correct. The plant will someday close. And what we should be discussing, and what should have been discussed 15, 20 years ago, was our preparation for the closure of the plant. It will close at some point, whether it's tomorrow or 20 years from now, it will close. And to put it into perspective, there are 650 jobs in the plant. They're good paying jobs. I mean, these people make significant amounts of money. And it adds to the economy of Windham County. The studies that have been done, the economic studies, indicate that not only are there 650 jobs in the plant, there are another 600 jobs within Windham County that are there because the plant is there. Actually, it's broader than Windham County, Tinsdale, Massachusetts, but within the region, there's another 600 jobs. So we're talking about nearly 1,100 people that would be put out of work, and it's about $100 million to the economy of Windham County every year. So it's a significant economic blow. And it's a shame that it has become a political fight. All of what's going on now and all of what you read, thank you, all of what you hear and read in the papers is really a political fight. Had Governor Shumlin's opponent, Brian Doobie, been elected, we probably would not be having this discussion. So much of it is political, and in the political arena, you have to listen carefully and make your own decision as to what the real facts are, because both sides sometimes engage in a little hyperbole. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. My feeling is that the use of nuclear power is criminal. The only reason that we are still, the discussion shouldn't be just about Vermont Yankee, it should be about all nuclear power plants. As we've seen the situation in Japan where there's a disaster, remnants of the poisons that were released from that are affecting us all around the world, that the nuclear power plants do not know borders. And what we're going to leave our children, our grandchildren, and future generations is criminal, and we should stop. There should be a moratorium on all nuclear energy immediately. What my feeling is that people have a fear. There's fear that jobs will be lost, and in fact, jobs will be created because we'll need to replace that energy with other sources of energy. And people are afraid their electric bills are going to go up, and the fact is their electric bills might even go down. I think that it's very important that all nuclear power plants, wherever they are, be shut down as soon as possible.
Is there time for me to add something?
No, you each get 2 minutes.
Oh, you did. Wow.
All right, well, I've been going to Vermont Yankee protests since before I could walk, because I grew up in a family that just did that. And as I got older, I started to think a little bit, well,
30 seconds.
maybe nuclear power isn't such a bad thing. Maybe we need it. And I looked at it, and what I saw was accidents happen. They just happen. They've happened, I don't know, every 20 years or so. A little bit more between Chernobyl and Fukushima, but they happen. And the remnants of those disasters don't go away ever. Things with a half-life never disappear. Radiation stays with us forever. And
I'm sorry, we have to move on. Thank you.
Now, am I included in this, or can I
Yes.
say something?
You are included with the Liberty Union Party.
So that means I can't talk about how many more jobs we'll get.
We're going to have follow-up questions. So if anybody has follow-up questions, you can be the first one to answer.
Okay, because I have some good information about how we can have some good green jobs for you guys.
Excellent. So does anybody have any follow-up questions for the Liberty Union Party? Or any party for that matter?
Yeah, I'll just say it. How are we going to create jobs?
I'll answer that. Okay. The thing is that there are really 211 Vermont jobs at Vermont Yankee.
We're not using Vermont Yankee Power right now. It's not because we didn't renew our contract, so we're not getting any power from them. So right now our lights aren't going out or anything. But if we jobs that, let me see if I can find, I have this written down here. If the jobs that are, if we use our natural resources like wood and wind, that way of producing electricity supplies 5 jobs for every megawatt produced. If we just put more into Efficiency Vermont provides 3 full-time jobs for every megawatt, while nuclear power, wherever it is, provides 1 megawatt per 1 full-time job per megawatt. So it's the least efficient system anyway. And I feel as though the Secretary of State office, which regulates, has a lot to do with regulating corporations, ought to be putting them out of business and sending energy back to Louisiana as soon as possible.
Thank you. Would any other party like to answer that question or have anything else to say about nuclear power or jobs, like green jobs, such? Anyone? Yes.
I think that green power is important, and I think that jobs can be created with green power. But what we have to bear in mind is when they build wind projects, there are a good number of construction jobs, but when the job's finished, there's very few employees that remain. As far as a per megawatt per employee, there's 650 employees every BY, and there's 650 megawatts. So it's kind of a one-to-one thing. But a balanced portfolio is important, and I do think that we need to move in other directions and find other sources of energy. I alluded to earlier that we worked on an energy bill. I voted against the energy bill because I think it was short-sighted and doesn't look at new technologies that may occur. And we do use Vermont Yankee Power here in Vermont. We may not directly purchase it, but VY power goes onto the grid. And electrons don't distinguish whether they come from VY or Hydro-Quebec. The power we use comes from Vermont Yankee. The difference is, rather than being contracted with Vermont Yankee has become a merchant plant, which means that it sells on the open market. But we do use Vermont Yankee Power here in Vermont.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions on environmental or agricultural issues? If not, we are going to move on. Kelly.
I'm Kelly Garland. I'm a senior. My question is, if nuclear power is bad for our environment, what are your views on coal power plants? I know emissions from coal power plants in the west can travel up to our area via rain and snow.
Who would like to answer that?
Was that question directed to any particular party? No. So.
Why don't I start it, and I'm sure everybody else will have views on it. Coal represents a huge source, as you said, of pollution for all the states that are downwind, and that's why the Federal Environmental Protection Agency has increased regulation of coal emissions. It is possible to use coal in a way that isn't as environmentally destructive as we permitted it to be used, and so it is capable of being part of the energy mix. Natural gas, which we have an abundance of at the moment, is far cleaner, and it represents a more environmentally sound contribution. The difference between coal and nuclear is that coal generates waste, which has to be controlled, and it generates pollution. Nuclear waste remains toxic for literally hundreds of thousands of years, and it represents, and that's one of the reasons that I frankly don't favor nuclear power. It strikes me as environmentally irresponsible for us to bequeath to people who are going to be hopefully on Earth longer than modern humanity has existed, toxic substances, so that we can have these lights on during the hour and a half that we're here. That, to me, is not a trade-off that if prior generations had made those kinds of decisions, we would appreciate. We wouldn't want to be maintaining custody over highly toxic material far beyond anyone's lifespan.
Thank you. Any other party would like to? Oh, go right ahead.
I find the coal question a bit of a challenge, and one of the reasons for that is that there has been a lot of progress in cutting the pollution and making coal safer. It is, nevertheless, would appear to be a good deal more polluting and probably would remain that way than natural gas. Another byproduct of coal you see when you drive through, certain states, if you go down through Pennsylvania, there are things happening to mountains down there that we probably wouldn't like a lot in Vermont. So coal's got its disadvantages.
Yes, I guess I would just say something similar, that we have to remember not the final result, which is the electricity or the energy or even the atmosphere and the environment overall, but the immediate environment. The same kind of discussion that goes on about Vermont Yankee and its effect on the environment and jobs and the economy and the residents and all these things in Vernon and Windham County. As Tim alluded to, they're having the same discussions about coal production down south. And I think that the bottom line is, again, the conversation needs to be about renewable resources. Coal is
30
a finite.
seconds.
Thank you. Coal is a finite resource, and I think it's important to focus on renewable resources as alternatives as we move into the future. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move on to our next topic, okay? Because we're running out of time.
Madam Moderator?
Yes.
May I ask on the next topic if we start at that end of the table?
Yes, that's what I was planning on doing.
Yeah, they didn't quite get to answer the question that they wanted to answer.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
So our next topic is economy. Does anybody have any questions in regards to economics in Vermont? Anyone? Any teacher? Ms. Landenberg.
I don't think well, that's what the heck. Anyway, my question, I'm Ann Landenberger and I teach English and direct theater here. I'm wondering what we can do to make sure that when these kids go away and see the world and, get their education, that they can come back here and keep Vermont alive for generations to come and a lively, viable place. One nitty-gritty thing, and I hate to say it because I can't stand the towers, etc., but for instance, are we really moving ahead with cell service? I mean, things like that make the environment user-friendly for small business, think tanky kind of business, cottage industry kind of business. What's the scoop? Madam, yes.
Well, one problem that Vermont has is that we are part of a country which has been in an economic decline for quite a long time. I started being a Liberty Union candidate in 1984, and I always talked about how the small group at the top and how much their share of total income was, how much more they earned than low-income people. And as I can't find my little piece of paper, but back in '84, I think it was sort of like 15% of the highest earning people had like 45, more than half of the income. And then by '96, when I was a candidate for governor instead of Secretary of State, it had gone up quite a bit more. And the thing is that this kind of structural thing, I mean, when we're run by, the country is really run by corporations. not by individual people. And even the representatives who get sent to Washington, D.C. are corporate, they're sponsored by, they have to follow their corporate sponsors. So now that we have the 1% having 99%, I mean, it really is stark. I mean, it's the biggest, since the robber barons. And it's exactly what James Madison predicted when he said back in the Founding Father days that there will come a time when there will be too much wealth in the hands of too few. And let us hope that more intelligent, that there will be leaders then who will be intelligent enough to change the laws.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to answer that question? Party?
Thank you. Vermont has always had this problem with our young people leaving Vermont and not coming back. It happened in my own family. My dad was born in Holland, Vermont, lived on a farm with 15 other people, all his brothers and sisters, and to find a job, he moved to Massachusetts. And that has happened in Vermont generation after generation. We are a small state. We do have some very large strengths, though. The Vermont brand in and of itself is big. People come here to utilize the Vermont brand because it represents purity and integrity. And if you talk to people about Vermont products, they like that they tend to be organic, we use the land, and we use our natural resources effectively. So we do have a brand that we can operate with. What we need to do with the young people here in Vermont is train them for the jobs that are coming to be in Vermont. One of the problems, if you talk to folks like at IBM, they have jobs. They have jobs, and actually I'll go closer to home. There's a company in Brattleboro, Robotics of Vermont. They have jobs at that company that they cannot fill. You can step out of high school, and if you're a good math and science student, you can get a job, and the starting pay is about $55,000 a year. There are very precious few jobs in Vermont that start you at $55,000 a year. The teachers can attest to that here at this school. They're highly educated people, and they don't start nearly at that. I think one of the principal things that we need to do in the state of Vermont is reinvest in our educational system. Re-examine the funding and how we fund what we do here in school.
30 seconds.
Thank you. And that, I think, is of primary importance. If we expect our students to come back to Vermont after they've gone off to school, we have to offer them something, and in that offer, we have to train them to take advantage of any opportunity that may present itself in Vermont for them.
Thank you.
Yes, I'll be brief. I find that in running for office and doing so much research and learning more about things, it's really great to find out what you do learn. And tourism accounts for nearly half of the gross sales, or half of the gross product of the state of Vermont. And agriculture contributes over $100 million to the economy in the state of Vermont. And so I think what we need to do is focus on what we have and what is working here. Whether we like it or not, people are going to come here to visit, and they're going to come here to have second or third homes. Most of us live in communities with half of the homes empty due to second home ownership. That's very challenging in a lot of ways, but it is also a testament to the beauty and what we have here and what people want here from more populated areas along the seaboard. So I think we need to make Southern Vermont one of the top 3 picks for anyone that wants to visit rural America in the Northeast. They should be coming here. And if more people come here and buy more meals, and the restaurants serve more plates, and they turn down more beds in the inns, perhaps most of us, which have to have a lot of jobs in the service industry, can get paid $1 or $2 more. In order to pursue my passion, I've worked in 5 restaurants, 3 ski shops, and 3 ski mountains. And I've worked in the service industry tirelessly, and it's a dead-end job, quote unquote. And what that means is it isn't a great long-term career with a lot of payback and retirement. But what it is it is a job. And I've actually always found a job in Vermont. It might have been washing dishes. It might have been less than I thought I'd get. but our minimum wage is $2 more per hour than the rest of the country. I think there are a lot of efforts being made, and we need to invest in our human capital, return to Vermont. You are our future. We need to make jobs for you. You're the most important thing for our future here in Vermont, and I believe that strongly.
Thank you very much. You may go ahead.
I think Mr. Dunbar makes a point, but I worry a little bit about a downside of that point, and that is that, you know, if you look around, particularly if you look around at second homes, but you don't have to go to second homes. We have our share of the 1% in southern Vermont. And they tend to be a valuable source of jobs. They don't tend to be a valuable source of high-end jobs. I went to listen to the new president of UVM the other day for a little while, and he talked about a pipeline. He talked about a pipeline that would more effectively get you headed in the direction of college, where you would get the credentials and the background to go to work for companies like robotics in Brattleboro. So that if you don't have the money to indulge in farming, a lot of people like to do that. If you need to make some money, you could do it. It would be an improvement in our economy, and you could do it. You could stay here and buy shoes and clothes and food and all that good stuff. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think just as a preparatory, we'll take that off my time.
No, I'm sorry.
One of the things I really like about being in the Vermont legislature is that we are not as hyper-partisan and hyper-political as at the national level, and frankly in most states. And as I listened to Mike's comment, and I'm not disparaging anybody else's comments, but as I listened to Mike's comment, I thought, you know, if I had stood up first, I probably would have said just about exactly the same thing. The growth and future of Vermont is not a partisan issue. It's an issue of how we do the best by our people. We have, by national standards, a very low unemployment rate. We're one of the lowest states and have been throughout this whole recession. The problem in many cases is mismatches with how we educate young people, whether it's college-bound or whether it's people who want to go into other trades and professions, to really prepare them to carry out those jobs and to both make as good an income as they can, but also find as much pleasure out of that job as is possible. And matching education and looking at what areas in our economy are growing. Some areas of agriculture are absolutely growing in Vermont, and they're using the Vermont brand very effectively. So there is potential. And, you know, we have to also recognize that the departure of young people in some numbers, again, as Mike said, has always happened in Vermont, and it's not to be thwarted. If you want to become a biologist and study desert flora and fauna, guess what? You're not going to do it in Vermont. There are plenty of careers that take people out of the state and then later on bring them back. That's not unhealthy. That's a choice that people ought to be able to make, but we ought to ensure that some of the choices they can make are in this state.
Thank you. Any other questions on the economy? Ms. Olson.
I'm Mrs. Olmstead. I teach social studies here at Leland and Gray. My question piggybacks on Ms. Vandenberger's question, and that is the digital divide. Historically, we've seen that people who are communities that don't get the latest technology become backwaters. And I'm intellectualized this for years. I used to live in Vernon, had great internet. Now I've moved and don't have great internet. I would like to see that change because I think our kids are getting shortchanged.
Thank you.
Just kind of who could comment on that?
Thank you. Any party? Go ahead.
Oh, wait. Should we start down here?
Liberty Union, would you like to start, please?
We started last time. They get it this time.
I'm not going to take very long on this one. You're absolutely right. I live across from the Newfane Courthouse, and I watch people walk out the front door who are in trial, and they get out their cell phone, and then they look at their cell phone, and they walk around, and they look at their cell phone some more, and then they ask somebody passing by why their cell phone isn't working. And they have an absolutely stunned look on their face. I was in Egypt a year and a half ago. We were out in the middle of the Sinai Desert at the foot of Mount Sinai, hundreds of miles in the most desolate spot in the world. The gentleman who was hosting us got out his cell phone and was talking to London. We are in desperate need of having better internet and cell service here. The good news is that the governor has committed the state to a program of having essentially universal service in Vermont by the end of next year, and I think there's major progress being made. But there are a lot of areas in the state where it really is not been productive for the private companies to provide the kind of level of service that we need, simply because we have such a spread out population in the mountainous terrain. So this is one of those examples where a government-private enterprise partnership is going to get the job done, as opposed to just relying on private enterprise, which says the economics don't work in a lot of areas in Vermont.
I agree that we need cell service in the whole state, everywhere. And I think the case was pretty well stated by the gentleman to my right. I'm just going to pass this on.
And I agree. This is going to be unusual for me. Dick's actually right. We do have to applaud the governor's efforts on what we're going to do with internet and what we're going to do with broadband service in the state of Vermont. Governor Shumlin went in the right direction. That was something that was before my committee, and we took a lot of testimony on it and heard a lot of horror stories about how you don't have service. And even in Vermont, even in Vernon, where we do have excellent broadband service, there are folks in Vernon who do not have broadband service. And my other town, Guilford, when I cross Route 5 and go into Guilford, sometimes it's a blessing. My wife can't get in touch with me, so I don't have to stop getting the milk and things like that. But it is problematic, and it is problematic to the other issues of how we develop our economy. And until we do achieve that broadband ability, we are stifling our economy.
I'm on the board of the Putney Public Library, and there's a grant now for libraries all over the state, wherever they are, to have internet service. And I think, we have a number of computers. They're always occupied every time I go to the library. When the library is closed, the parking lot is filled with cars, with people who are hooking into to our internet service, our broadband service. And I know that's kind of a stopgap measure, but I think that's a major step, because a lot of people have access who wouldn't otherwise. And this is a good example of a government-private partnership, because there are a lot of things that government really needs to do. As Thomas Paine, another founding father, said.
All right, any other questions, follow-up questions on cell phones or economy? If not, we are going to move on. Yes, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Tom Walters. I'm a teacher here at Leland and Gray. I taught for 15 years up in Chittenden County and started just this fall here at Leland and Gray. My question has to do with school funding, Act 60 and Act 68. It's my perception, based on my experience, that the goal of equalizing student opportunity for education that was set forth in Act 60 and Act 68 has fallen short. Chittenden County schools are very different than schools down here. So I'm wondering first if you agree with that perception and how we might want to change that and level the playing field for all Vermont students.
Would anyone like to start?
Sure, start in the middle. Start in the middle.
When Act 60 first came to the fore, I was opposed to Act 60. I still think it was the wrong way to go. But more importantly is equity in education is not just about funding. There are schools in the state of Vermont that spend far less than other schools and achieve more. The most important thing that we have in equity in education is the person in front of the room. That's equity in education. And until we commit to hiring and assisting our teachers in getting more education and more abilities in front of the classroom, there's always going to be inequity. Also, we have to look at, one of the issues was, if we have more money, we can have smaller class size. Smaller class size is a poor measure. You can have a class of 35 students with one teacher with no problem if they're 35 well-behaved, well-motivated students. How many classes have 35 well-behaved, well-motivated students? That picture doesn't exist. When we measure student-teacher ratios, we have to look at the demographics of the class. You can have a class of 5 students that is far more challenging than a class of 25 students. We need to recognize those issues. It's not just the funding. It's what goes on within the classroom, and it's the people that we put in front of the classroom that is most important. And I do think we need to re-examine how we fund education in the state of Vermont and how we can most efficiently and effectively spend our dollars.
You all look well motivated and well behaved to me. I don't know. But I do agree that Act 60 and 68 are failures. And the reason, the upfront reason for my agreement with that is that I'm a lister in Weston, and I've served on both the local school board and the Floodbrook School Board. We in small towns do not have the population, and I'm not talking about people, I'm talking about the population in statistical terms. We do not have the population for the statistical methodology that's in Act 60 and 68 to work well for us.
Before we go ahead, my assistant needs to just ask a clarifying question.
It wouldn't cut into any of your time, but if you could clarify for the students that don't know what Act 60 and 68 are.
I don't even know what it is.
If you don't mind, sorry.
There was, I'm sorry, I don't know the year. There was a Brigham decision that came out of a small school in, I'd like to say Shoreham, but I don't think that's right. It's up on Route 30 anyway. The parents of a girl that was going to school up there sued the state because of inequity in the availability of good education. Any of you that have driven up Route 30 or ridden up Route 30, whatever, to Middlebury, have gone by that school a number of times. It's a little school that's on the right. If I could remember the town, you could place it in your mind. But anyway, it went to court. The court agreed that there was inequity in the availability of a good education in the state of Vermont, and that had largely to do with varying tax bases in school districts. And that is where we went toward Act 60 and Act 68. In Act 60, you come up with an equalized grand list, and that comes about through the application of statistical methodology that I referred to earlier. That's a bit above this presentation. It's quite a bit above this presentation. But the methodology behind that does not treat fairly small populations. I don't know if perhaps somebody else can add a little to that, but I think I've got some of it.
May we hear from the representative from the Liberty Union Party, please?
I'm glad you explained about the Brigham decision because I was a little foggy on that. I've been a teacher. I taught school in Brattleboro for 25 years. And before that, I taught in North Carolina and in Delaware. And I've always been really impressed by the quality of teachers the people who decide to be, the Vermont teachers I've known. But I think there are problems beyond the problem of like the statewide property tax and everybody being given an equal amount for each school. Isn't that the way it works? Each school gets an equal amount. And then if they want to spend more, they can. And that's why schools are much fancier in Chittenden, County than they are around here. But the other thing is that the federal government hasn't played fair. I mean, we've had unfunded mandates. I mean, the special education, it was ruled that public schools had to accommodate with special programs every special needs child, but they didn't fund it and still haven't. And then the No Child Left Behind, which just kind of penalizes schools and calls them failed when actually looking at them from our own point of view, kids are making as much progress as they can. It's just pretty impossible to have everybody on grade level. I mean, we measure the progress by where they start and where they end during the school year. But I really feel as though there are a lot of good teachers in Vermont trying their very best. And I'm proud to have been a member of Vermont NEA for all these years and have represented them in national conventions.
Excellent, thank you. Now we'd like to hear from the representative of the Democratic Party.
Just to tell a little more of the background, Brigham actually stood for a very simple proposition. Every student in Vermont has a constitutional right to a good education. It didn't attempt to say that every school has to spend exactly the same money, but it said you have to have a baseline. The problem it addressed was that poor towns had property tax rates of $3 and were not able to fund a reasonably good school, while very, very property-rich towns might have a tax rate of 25 cents on property and had incredible schools with swimming pools and other wonderful features that poor towns couldn't even dream of. Act 60 was passed by a Democratic House to try to fix that problem. Act 68 was passed by a later Republican House to fix what were perceived as problems with Act 60. So both parties have their fingerprints on the current education funding formula. I think we are not going to get to absolute equity of schools. Geography and economics are going to militate against that. But I think what we can be proud of is that Vermont actually statewide does provide a very high level of education. We actually rank very well nationally in terms of the caliber of education we provide. We can always improve on that. But there sometimes politically has been this notion that property taxes are something that the towns that feel the current formula doesn't serve them well are going to use as an issue, and they have a legitimate beef, I think. But when you see a problem continue, as education funding has been reformulated over the last 125 years over and over again, nobody has ever come up with the absolutely perfect system. And I don't think anybody will, but the test really is, can you come up with a system, an actual proposal that is constitutional, that is perceived by the legislators overall as being fairer than the current system, and can you, most importantly, tell us how you're going to fund it? If you can pass those three tests, I'll vote for it, and I think so would most members of the legislature.
Thank you very much. Would the representative of the Republican Party
Or independent.
or the Independent Party like to speak briefly on it?
Independent non-party.
Yeah, just a couple seconds. I'd like to just say that the current system that exists, there's certain things I think we can look at, and one of those is the appropriations. The education fund is made up of property taxes, lottery revenue, and an appropriation or a transfer of monies from sales tax and income tax from the general fund. If the general fund was handled or managed with great fiscal responsibility and accountability, perhaps that appropriation could be greater. Perhaps the revenue from the lottery could be increased, and perhaps that would reduce some of the pressure on property taxes while not taking away from the education budget. The other thing I think that's important to state is that both Governor Douglas and Shumlin, the last two governors over the last 4 years, have either shorted or not put back in nearly $40 million, nearly a third potentially of some of the budget of education. And so I think it's incredibly important when elected that I focus on that $27 million specifically going back into the education budget. And I think that it's very important that we make sure that also we recognize that in the Constitution that the one thing that's guaranteed to the citizenry is education. So the Brigham decision in 1997 required the state to fix the problem. However, there's a fair amount of bureaucracy and administration that comes with that. New York State allows only 15% of administration to be part of the budget. In Vermont, it's much greater. I think we could reduce the level of administration, reduce the level of bureaucracy, and make sure the money goes towards the students' education and outcomes, and the infrastructure, and a sustainable wage for the people that are trying to educate our children, which are the future. Thank you very much.
I really have nothing to add. I think Emmett just read my notes.
Okay, well on that note, we're actually on the right track. So does anybody have any questions on education? That is our next topic. Kelly.
I was wondering what your views on standardized testing is.
Would anybody like to begin? Sure.
Well,
Liberty Union.
as a former teacher, using tests as a way of gauging where children are, what they don't know yet, and what they need to learn is one thing. And I remember, it seems like when I first started teaching at Putnam Central School, we had the Iowas, or one of the women called them, there were Iowa tests that had to be given to second or third graders every year. And they were important, but they weren't pass or fail. I mean, I think the idea now of tests that are make or break, that a person doesn't graduate if they haven't passed a certain test, is really barbaric. There are other things that make a person well-rounded and a good student. I mean, the participation in class, their energy and enthusiasm for getting things done that are worthwhile are also very important. And this just seems, I just don't like the idea of the test score being all important, or schools. This is a personal story. I have a niece who's moved into a small community in North Carolina, who's going to have to remove her kids from the public school because it's overcrowded. They teach to the test, and the teachers are grouchy, and it's probably because they're having to teach to the test, and they have too many kids in their classes.
I think high-stake testing shortchanges our students. If you look at the standardized tests, Vermont does do very well on them. But what's more important is something that we do in Vernon. If you do standardized tests, and we measure the 4th grade and the 8th grade, well, each year that class changes. So you get different testing results in your 4th grade. Does that measure whether your school is failing or passing? No, it just measures that group of students. What is more significant is that in Vernon, every student is tested, and we have planning meetings. The principal has planning meetings once a month, goes over every student in the school. So what we measure is Alex progressing from 1st grade to 2nd grade? It doesn't matter what she's doing on a standardized test. Are we helping her to achieve all she can do in education? That's a direction we need to move in. We need to move in a direction where every student has an IEP, an individual educational plan. Not just because of special ed need, it's because that's how we measure if we're failing or if we're succeeding at school. Under Nickleby, which is in principle not a bad piece of legislation, you want to have accountability and all those sorts of things, that's wonderful. The problem with Nickleby is the goals are unachievable. Every school in the state of Vermont will be a failing school. And if you think it's difficult for your school board to get funding now, wait till the local community finds out that they have a failing school.
30 seconds left.
Thank you. And that has very little bearing on the actual facts of your school. Leland and Gray will be a failing school. This year, Vernon was a failing school. We achieved some of the highest scores in the state, in fact, some of the highest scores in the nation. We're a failing school this year. It's a problem with Nickleby. It's a problem with how we test people. We have to look at individual students, not entire schools. Excuse me. Thank you.
I agree with both of those comments, and that is that it's very important to understand the diversity of a student body and each individual, and that what the career path is and what happens after high school or after college is not going to be very standardized. And so therefore we need to think about what we're teaching and what kind of opportunities we're preparing our students for. And so we can't teach to the test, I don't believe. And if we do teach to the test, I think there should be a lot more tests that are given in different ways. I grew up with great learning disabilities, and I had to take the SAT to get into college. And I did get into college, which was great. It was a good school, but fortunately I had other extracurricular activities because my SAT testing, I took it twice on time, then again. And in the end, I'm standing in front of you. I think I'm making some sense. I'm a businessman. I want to represent you. I'm capable. I made it through college, and my combined test score was about 806. Some people can't test, and it has nothing to do with their ability to perform and contribute to our society.
I think the points on standardized testing have been pretty well made down the line.
Thank you.
I guess, I agree with comments that have been made. Emmett's comment stirred a memory for me. My wife was actually born in India. Her father was English, her mother was Indian, and she had taken essay tests throughout her career in high school until she emigrated at 18. And after a few years, she decided that maybe she ought to try college. And she thought, well, being logical, she would take an aptitude test to see if she was really going to be able to perform in college. And the aptitude test was multiple choice. And my wife has an incredible ability to read qualifying facts into questions that really aren't there. And so she was able to agonize about every question. Well, the upshot was she failed. And she was kind of crushed by that. She was working at the time as a medical secretary for University of Toronto Hospital. And she had really thought college might give her a chance to advance. And fortunately, a family friend was a college professor and said, why don't you try taking a college class at the local college and see how you do? Well, Linda took the class and she got an A. She ended up getting virtually straight A's all the way through her PhD. The person delivering the test is still probably giving tests telling people they can't qualify to perform in college. So tests are an instrument. They can be useful in some ways. They don't test everything. They don't test some of the things that are, I think, most important in life. They don't test creativity. They don't test teamwork. They don't test various forms of logic that really are much more important than some of the narrow things. And they also tend to focus education into a limited number of channels. And I think that can be a very detrimental, limiting factor for students because you ought to get a broad-based education, not just take the classes that will get you through tests.
Thank you. Okay, so are there any more questions on education? If not, we are going to move on to our next topic. Susie.
What are your opinions on music education?
Would anyone like
what was the question?
Could I clarify the question?
What is your opinion on music education in schools and its benefits to the well-being of the students?
Thank you. Sure. First, we'll hear from Representative.
I think that it's very important as music is a whole other language, and I think that it provides a tremendous amount of abilities to, or opportunities to students in different ways. And I think that the arts and music are budgets that should not be cut, in my opinion, because it's dramatically, no pun intended, important.
Well, as a former kindergarten teacher, music was very important in helping kids learn a lot of things. Like, do you know what traffic lights say to you? Do you know what traffic lights say to you? Yellow says be careful, green says you may go, but red is most important, it says stop, you know.
Alright, now we are going to move on to our next topic. Thank you, that was a beautiful song. Alright, our next topic is healthcare. Would anyone from the audience like to ask a question about healthcare? Or teachers? Bruno.
Hello, my name is Bruno Posha. I come from Serbia. I'm an exchange student here. I'm staying for 8 more months. And yesterday I had an interesting conversation with my host dad about healthcare and other things, but he said that Vermont is the closest state to accepting social health care. I don't know much about it, so I would like to hear your opinion about it, and I would like to, find out something about it, what people think and what you think about it.
Thank you.
Okay, as I alluded to earlier, healthcare is very near and dear to me. I worked as a department head at Bay State Medical Center for a number of years. I was department head here at Brattleboro Memorial Hospital for a number of years. I voted against the health care bill in Vermont, and I had strong objections to that health care bill. It is not a vote saying we do not need health care reform. We do need health care reform. My negative vote was that, one, we don't know how much it's going to cost, and we don't know who and how folks are going to be covered. We still don't know that. Now we're talking about what taxes are we going to raise to support this healthcare system. My wife and I own a medical billing company, which will be closed on November 1st. We've been in business for 23 years. The reason it is closing is some of the things that have been done in healthcare. Electronic medical records being one of them. My wife's job and mine was to consult with physicians on how to make their practices grow, be efficient, and serve their patients as best they could. Unfortunately, since the health care bill passed in Massachusetts, the 37 physicians we have, 2 surgeons up in northern Vermont, have moved to Georgia. 28 physicians are retiring, and the balance are going to work for hospitals. The way we did this, and the rushed manner in which we did it, is going to create a physician shortage in the state of Vermont, and I have strong concerns about the quality of health care moving forward in the state of Vermont. So I do think we need health care reform, but I think the direction we're heading in may be the wrong direction. And I'm sure my colleague on the right will disagree with me totally.
Here you go.
Representative Hebert is, as always, perspicacious. I do differ. Let me tell you the problem first. The problem in Vermont is that we are on an absolutely unsustainable course with regard to health care. Costs are increasing $1 million a day in Vermont for health care, and have been, and are likely to continue. We can't afford that course. We also have a significant number of people who are uninsured. They get health care of a sort, they go to emergency rooms and get the most expensive and the latest health care after a problem has gotten out of bounds. That also is unsustainable. Representative Hebert's criticisms of the bill, in some part, are logical if you don't understand what we did when we passed the bill. We passed a bill that said we are going to attempt to fix this problem by creating a universal health care system in Vermont. It will still be operated in terms of providing coverage by private insurance companies. It won't be a government health care system with a bunch of government bureaucrats deciding what you get. Secondly, we did the same thing you would do if you were going to build a home. We said you go through a series of steps. First you buy the property, Then you go to an architect, you design the home, then you figure out what the cost of the home is as you've designed it, then you figure out, can I pay for it and how? Same course we set for healthcare reform. So these questions that you're seeing on TV ads, which I think you have to learn to think of and listen to critically, about we don't know what it's going to cost, we don't know how it's going to operate. Of course we don't, because we set a course where we were going to start designing the plan, come back to the legislature, have the legislature approve it, then we would figure out what is it going to cost, have the legislature approve that, then say, and how are we going to pay for it? And if at any one of those stages, the legislature or the governor don't feel it works, we stop. So these questions are premature.
Thank you. Any other party? If you'd like to break out the song, that'd be great too.
Oh, okay. I think my recall is that the student's question or statement was that his in-home dad stated that Vermont was the closest state to socialized medicine. I think it's obvious from the statement over here on my left that there are some people in the medical profession that think that's true.
I think that one of the most important things to recognize is that the state of Vermont is a graying state. We have a large aging population, and that we must invest in services for the aging, and we need to be sure that we have things in place for them, particularly in southern Vermont. And I think that could be part of an economic boon as well. Where our district is, particularly in Londonderry area, there's several people that have to travel a long way for a hospital. And you have Grace Cottage here, which has great services, but then you still need to perhaps go to Rutland or to Dartmouth or somewhere for extensive, or even down across the border to Massachusetts. So while the discussion is about how do people have health care coverage, how do they afford it, is everyone covered, how does the state save money, what does it cost, all those things are true, that they're greatly important conversations to be having, and I think that we mustn't forget that we also just need to be sure that we have basic services for our population, particularly the aging population of Vermont.
I'd like to hear from the aging, a member of the aging population. And I'm pretty lucky because I do have good health coverage. I mean, I've been on Medicare for about, since I was 65, about 12 years now. And that's been wonderful. My retirement, my pension, along with my retirement pension, there is I get the Medigap coverage. The fact is that Medicare doesn't cover everything. So we older folks need a Medigap policy, either through Blue Cross or some other insurance company. And so I'm lucky because that comes to me free through my teacher retirement. But, and I think there are quite a few of us in Vermont. I mean, we're fairly well heeled, not, well off retirees. And I worry, I have 4 grown children, and I worry that their future, that their retirement is going to be nowhere as good for them as mine because of the nature of the work they do and the way things are for the next generation. But the closer we get to socialized medicine, the better I like it. I mean, it's really a scandal that we are the only, that we are the only industrialized country. We're the richest country in the world. And health care is not a right for every citizen. I think it's despicable.
Thank you. We are done with questions. Each party, representative from each party, will have 2 minutes for a closing statement. We would like to start this time with the Liberty Union Party.
Do you guys mind? I'm sorry. I'm really hoping that, as I said, I think Liberty Union has its place, and it needs to keep going. And I'm beginning to think that now this two-headed monster needs to have a third, like Siamese triplet head, because the Progressive Party, it seems as though I'm a candidate in a contest between Liberty Union and all the others put together. I mean, I think Jim Condos has Democratic, Republican, and progressive support. But what I'm hoping is that Liberty Union will keep going. I mean, I may not have the energy for it for a whole lot longer, but we do have, and Peter Diamondstone, who has been sort of the dynamic persona getting it going, is not feeling very well right now. We do have 2 Diamondstones who are coming up, and other young people, and I guess I would like to implore any of you who think that you would, be at all interested. Liberty Union is, as candidates, we're sponsored by the Socialist Party. Not everybody in Liberty Union belongs to the Socialist Party USA, but a lot of us do. Most of us in this group and in the Brattleboro area. And we have a monthly Socialist Party / Liberty Union meeting that meets in Brattleboro. And I'd like to invite you when you're, after I finish, I've got a pad if you want to write your name down, if you'd be interested in being notified about that meeting. I'll leave some Liberty Union platforms and a few issues of the Socialist out here for you to take if you're interested. Thank you.
Once again, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to spend some time with us and listen to what we have to say. And it was nice to hear what you had to say. The healthcare topic, I think, is probably, you could see, could be an all-day subject here at the school. But what I want to do at this point is reassure you that Vermont is not national politics. Vermont is real local politics. Now, as you saw, there are significant political differences and ideological differences between my friend, Representative Merrick, and myself. We have huge differences. We argue about things on the floor. We may argue in committee. Some people are shocked. One of my closest friends in the legislature was Sarah Edwards, and if you want to see 2 different people fight about nuclear energy, it's the 2 of us. And people were amazed that we would work together on other pieces of legislation. That's the Vermont legislature. Unlike the national politics or the national scene, because you do not agree on issues does not make one person or the other a bad person. We respect one another in Vermont. We have strong debate, and we argue and we fight, but at the end of the day, all parties involved are looking out for the best interest of the state of Vermont. We may have different ideas on how to get there, but that's the bottom line to us. The one fear I have in the state of Vermont right now is that we have supermajority. You have a governor, the House, and Senate belonging to one party. Doesn't matter which party it is. It's not a good thing. Because when you have a supermajority, if you're heading down the wrong road, there's nothing from stopping you from heading down that wrong road. And as I've learned at home, I have had some of the best ideas in the world. And when I shared them with my wife, I found out how bad that idea was. It's the same in Montpelier. If everyone is marching to the same tune, you can come up with some bad results. And neither party has a monopoly on good ideas or bad ideas. Both parties have come up with some pretty ludicrous stuff. But I do want to say you should be quite pleased. The legislature in the state of Vermont does all that it can to represent all the people of the state of Vermont, regardless of party.
Thank you.
As an independent, I'm not a member of any particular party, and I have never been a member of any particular party. I truly am an independent, and as farmers are 1% of the population, and organic farmers are 1% of that population, I might even be considered an anomaly. And it's not because I don't think that I can swim with the school or that I need to be separate from other people or anything like that. It's just that in Vermont in particular, one person can make a difference. And I've always believed that, and I've also always believed that we can make a change within the system. So I've always worked within systems to try to make change. And As an independent, I will be able to visit all the different caucuses. The different parties meet regularly throughout the session, and as an independent, I can visit those caucuses and hear those good ideas or bad ideas and take away from that what I can. I can also, as an independent, bring the progressive democratic legislators and Republicans to come together on certain ideas that can benefit my district. Our district's very unique because we have 3 counties with 7 senators. So if I can reach 7 senators, that's very helpful. There's 30 senators in the Senate, and there's 150 representatives in the House. So if you have 7 senators in your district, and you can reach a few more, and you have an idea or a bill, and you present it, you have a third of the Senate perhaps agreeing with you or liking what you're doing. I think that's really important. And I will offer fresh ideas and a new voice for my district. And I am attentive, and I am aware, and I am approachable, and I've always brought people together to get things done, and I will continue to bring people together to get things done, regardless of your age or where your primary residence is. In other words, whether you can vote for me or not is irregardless to my ability to represent you and move us in a positive direction in our Wyndham, Bennington, Windsor district. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Before we hear from our final representatives, if the bell rings, students, faculty, please stay seated until we are completely done with the form.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. The case for independence, I think, has been well made. In my view, it's an advantage running as an independent because the other parties do have good ideas, and they have bad ideas too. And an independent is in a position to, I feel as if I'm competing with it. An independent is a position to perhaps pick the good ideas and help to run with the good ideas. I have experience in having been a Lister school board member so that I can recognize some of the ideas that I would think were good, particularly in taxation and with schools for that matter. I do admire the agricultural activity that goes on in Vermont. I do think that down here in southern Vermont we perhaps have a lower level of awareness than we might have of what goes on with agriculture in the Northeast Kingdom and up Route 22 and up Route 30, where we have some dairy farms that are, they're really good-sized farms, and they hire a lot of people and they put out a lot of product. Other than that, I'd like to thank you again, and I'll pass the mic on.
I'm tempted to ask how much you want to duck your next class, but that wouldn't be right. I'm also going to pass over Mike Hebert's comment about the need for political balance in Vermont because the Democrats have a supermajority. His party had every statewide office and virtually every legislative seat for 110 years, and they never thought to mention that idea then. So I think the voters are the ones who create political balance, and because you're all going to either be voters this year or voters within a couple of years, I just want to talk about a little critical listening skill. When you listen to political ads and you start hearing the voice become very scary, don't trust the ad. The ad that says, "Did you know that Representative Mike Hebert likes to eat barbecued babies for breakfast?" It probably means he likes to eat barbecued bacon for breakfast. I mean, when they try to scare you, it sends a message that you ought to run from. You ought to think about it. Secondly, learn a little critical listening skill. When you hear an ad that says, "Did you know that Governor Shumlin has increased Vermont spending to over $5 billion? What does that say? Does it say that he has increased Vermont spending by $1 billion? Or does it mean he increased Vermont spending by $10,000, which took it over $5 billion? It doesn't say he increased spending by $5 billion. It says he increased it to over $5 billion. It may be important or it may be totally meaningless. Learn to listen to the ads and to the statements by people like us critically, because it makes a difference. Finally, and boy, what a segue to the bell. Vote. It's the most important thing you can do as a citizen of a democracy. Vote.
Wait a second. Right. First of all, I'd like to thank all of our representatives who came today, took time out of their schedule to talk to us. So that we should have another round of applause for them. And wait. I'd like to thank all of you guys